They're pidyon shvuyin in the middle of a war by our enemy. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you everybody so much for coming. Thank you so much, Robert Rosen, for opening up your home. I have to go around speaking in many different places, and certain communities, I just you could feel it walking in that you want to speak there, you want to be there. Baltimore certainly so far has been the place that you really want to be at, you really want to speak in, you really want to connect to. Growing up, when I was a teenager, I had a very close friend that lived out here. So I came out here pretty often. So if you recognize me, that wasn't me. I didn't do that. We were teenagers. It's not my fault. Moving along. So really the speech sort of writes itself. It's like, it's the easiest thing in the world. It's the easiest thing in the world. I had a friend of mine who was a pulpit rabbi, and he got a call one day from a family, and they said, we're, related to Mrs. So-and-so. He had no clue who this lady was. And they said, she was 102, she passed away, and, we're calling on the rabbi to fulfill his duties. And he said, I have no idea what you're talking about. And they said, she's been paying her dues to the shul. She hasn't showed up in about 40 years, but she's been paying her dues. She's been paying through her husband, for her. She's been paying since before he became rabbi over there, like 15 years before that. So he said, I happened to have been speaking to him. I was talking about something else. When he was on the way to the funeral, he's like, what in the world am I supposed to say at this funeral? I have no idea. I've never even met this lady. That's a very rough speech. The hardest speech I've ever given was, I'll never forget, I called my brother on the way to the speech, and I was with my wife. I called my brother Ari. I said, Ari, I need some help. I gave him the rundown. It was the most difficult crowd I'm ever going to have and the most difficult topic. So I was like, do you have any advice? So he goes, you're calling the master. I'll take care of you, don't worry. I told him about the crowd, tell him about the situation. He's like, yeah, you're on your own. I was speaking to my daughter's backyard day camp. I have no idea what to say to 8-year-old girls. It was a 15-minute speech. I couldn't do it. I literally, it was 8 minutes I got out. I was like, I have to leave. None of you get my jokes. I don't know what to do. I have no idea if you know, I have no idea. So a speech like this, though, you speak for something like Yad L'Achim, this writes itself. They make movies about stuff like this. Honestly, a ride-along, if it was mutter to do, a ride-along movie on anyone who works in Yad L'Achim would have been so much better than having me tonight. So much more effective. Just to watch this go down, watch one of their videos, watch one testimonial of one woman, and you're going to sit there being like, how is this not headlines? Everywhere. Everything they send to me. Everything. I remember asking Rav Nasanel, I was like, who cuts up your videos? He's like, we have some people. He's like, but we don't have to. We don't have to. Just hearing the story is enough. The daughter of a Hamas sheikh? You have to be crazy. You got to realize, the Israelis, the military, they don't do these things. These are covert operations. This is wild. What's happening? The amount of time, energy, and danger that they're going through. I asked him, how does this woman, he sent me a speech, I'm like, how does she do that? I forgot who it was. It wasn't Rav Nasanel, I forgot who it was. And I said, isn't she afraid? He said, she's afraid. But she's more afraid of not saying anything. And the truth is that in a situation like that, where everything is so dire, is so big, we could tend to focus on that and say that we're so far away from it, but in reality we're not. One of the speeches that I saw, one of the women were explaining exactly how this happens. Because that's the first thing, most of us, especially here in our privilege and our everything, Baruch Hashem, that we have over here, we can't really fathom. I have a pet peeve. I'm not a news person. I know I'm about to upset somebody in here with this. It's just a personal preference. That's all it is. if I'm going to watch something, I prefer it to be scripted by good writers. News is scripted by really bad writers. It's not that interesting. It's just that we believe that it's real, so that's what makes it interesting. But the storyline is not that great, and there's never a good ending. It's just it's lazy writing, basically. And it's not real at the end of the day, or tomorrow it won't be real, so it doesn't matter. That's my personal opinion. I know everyone always wants to go, but you have to know what's going on in the world. I'm going to find out. Somehow I've never listened to the news, and somehow I know all the big headlines. So I'm not a big news person, personally. However, when a big news is going to come up, and everyone's going to be there checking their phones and checking this out, and everyone's going to be forwarding it all over the place, I'm blown away about how this is not something so much bigger. We've become a little bit desensitized to things and say this isn't important because we have all these big things coming in and this hyper attention to it, and it grabs us, and it's a catchy headline, and we tend not to live in the reality of what's going on around us. So this woman got up and she spoke, and I one of the big reasons I'm not into news is that I'm not big into the whole fear-mongering idea. You know, I see a room full of people over here. I'm sure some of you at some point, some of us at some point, during Corona, during riots, during things said, that's it, we're moving to Israel. Usually it's a person who never actually lived in Israel. Because if you did, you would know it's not all sunshine and rainbows out there. It's a difficult life out there also. But fine, that's it, we're moving to Israel. Everyone ended up staying. We didn't take this drastic measure on this thing, but it's just fear-mongering. The whole world's coming to an end. It's all gonna. I block these people in my life. People that just send me bad news all day long, this horrible stuff. We were not meant sensory-wise to be able to take in this amount of negativity and still say, yeah, everything's great. It's an incredible thing. I tell it to my students all the time. We walk around being like, the world's gone. Are you joking? Look at all this bad that's happening. There's bombs and wars and everything horrible is going on. I'm like, you do realize you're saying that to me right now, sitting on a couch in an air-conditioned room, drinking a coffee, wearing shoes you have no idea who made, in clothing, and your next worry really is, am I going to make it home before I'm hungry, or should I eat here? That you realize you're saying that in your mind, like this is a big worry. When you walk into shul, when I walk into shul, I had to speak this past Shabbos in a shul, they changed the time of the speech right before Shabbos. So whoever was in charge of air conditioning didn't get to that thing. So for the first half hour of the speech, it was schmaltzing in the shul. And that's all anyone was able to say walking into the shul. You had to see the shul. It was gorgeous. And it took about 10 seconds after the air conditioning kicked in that everyone was comfortable and no one said a word. No one was like, oh, I'm sorry, Rabbi, you got to stop speaking for 1 second. Air conditioning, right? It's amazing. Did you smell that before? And now nothing. It's amazing. This is incredible. I want to take a nap. It's unbelievable. No one, not one. The world's incredible, and we don't know how to appreciate it. So I'm not saying this for the fear-mongering aspect. I'm saying this for the unbelievable work, because this is the type of thing that starts around a Shabbos table somewhere, where someone says a line like, and we've all been there. It doesn't start, it usually starts at a Kiddush and shul. We've all been there. Someone should really finish the sentence with whatever you want. Now, no one there is doing it. Someone really needs to go over and set the record straight with the schools. The schools are the bad ones always. The schools need to be set straight. As we say in Arabic, Faddalu. You're welcome, go ahead. I'll drive you there. No, what happened? You were very passionate. Very. To take something from point A to point B is very far. Yet you have an organization that hears that there are women and children that are basically being kept. This is a real deal pigeon shvuyin. Nowadays, a real checking every single box pigeon shvuyin. It is one of the rarest mitzvahs we have around nowadays, outside of things that we cannot possibly do around the Beis HaMikdash. It is one of the rarest mitzvahs we have an opportunity for, is Pidyon Shvuyin. And you have the full capability for it, where you have people who are literally imprisoned. Not, by the way, in a beautiful country club prison in upstate New York. Not there. Not in our maximum security prisons, which are dangerous, and not even there. They're not just Pidyon Shvuyin in a prison. They're Pidyon Shvuyin in the middle of a war by our enemy. By the number one enemy of Jews right now. They're sitting in their villages and their homes. If that doesn't get you, then what this woman said has to. Because one thing we Jews have, I know everyone's waiting for the end of that. Let me make it up. Hang on. What's the one thing we have? I always hate if I'm in a question and answer panel, and someone said, if there's one thing you can, I'm like, yes. That's my answer to every time anyone starts off a question with that. Like, if there's one thing you could do for chinuch, what would it be? I'm like, yes. Like, that's not an answer. I'm like, good, because that wasn't a real question. There's no one thing. Stop looking for the one thing and then say you're Yotze. It's a whole process. It's a lot of stuff. So you're going to have to dedicate yourself. I apologize. But if there's one thing us Jews have, aside from compassion and loyalty, is we do have a little bit of an ego. We do. And if what I said till now isn't going to stir it, then this will. This woman, the daughter of a Hamas sheikh, who was saved by Yad L'Achim. Hamas isn't also the name of a candy store in Palestine, right? It's all the same. A Hamas sheikh. She's saved by Yad L'Achim. She says, why? Why is it? Because it just sounds like fear-mongering. They're taking our daughters and bringing them. What happens over there? And she went through the process. An Arab girl, due to Sharia law and everything else, is not allowed to date a boy. They can go off the derech, but within their confines, they're not allowed. It's also a tight-knit situation. So everyone's going to know everything that goes on. So what do the Arab boys do? They go to work in Israel, then they go around, and they meet the non-religious girls or whatever. And in Israel, it's very open, very left, very free. You're allowed to be whatever you want. So they go to Tel Aviv, they meet a girl, and if you've ever walked through the Arab shuk and tried to be sold something, and actually paid attention, try to be sold something by any of the Arabs in the Arab shuk, these men have silver tongues. Their ability to convince you of something is unreal. They sound like the most compassionate. You really think them after they sell you something. You're like, I can't believe you did this for me. You took my money and gave me product. I'm blown away. You are the nicest person ever. They're unbelievably talented. And they sit there and they talk to these girls and they convince them that they promise them the world. And they convince them that they don't believe in this Sharia and they don't believe in this and they don't believe in that. And the minute that they get them behind enemy lines, she has nowhere to go anymore. I apologize for this part, but they will get her pregnant and they'll say, fine. The nice ones will say, fine. You don't want to be one of my wives? That's fine. Leave. Those kids, though, are staying here. This is how they're threatening them. That is the nicest way that they're threatening them. It gets a lot more gruesome than that. And they're going around picking up these girls and practically kidnapping them and keeping them for their own. The question is, why other than animal instinct? No, there's a big reason why. Because I'm saying, how does that work? This was always my question. How are they bringing these girls home? I have a I had a Moroccan grandmother. Needless to say, if I would have brought home someone that far removed from our upbringing, I wouldn't be able to hear in my right ear right now. She was old, but she could pack a punch when she needed to. She saved up that energy just for those moments. She would have removed her shoe, and I wouldn't have ran, because you don't, and she would have gotten me. How does everyone accept this girl into their fold so easily? Listen to this, and if you tell me that there's a greater act of terrorism happening against us, I will respectfully or disrespectfully disagree. It's not only not shunned, it's respected and looked great upon. This is the move for them. Why should we sacrifice our own children? Go, Parei Mitzrayim, go, get their daughters, make them Arabs, have Arab babies, and then have them go blow themselves up. This way it's just, if for Jews it's Jew on Jew, it's the best thing, it's poetic justice for them. They're laughing at us. They're using our own children against us. It's the easiest thing in the world to pull off to some unassuming, uncredited, unknowing, naive girl. It's easy. They train them for this. And we have one answer. Our tefillas for sure. Our hopes are for sure. But in no way do we sit back and say, Rabbi Shalom, I'm going to daven and you're going to handle this. This is not the time for that. This is the time, says Yad L'Achim, for action. And it's not just the paying, which I don't even think they get paid. I know they don't, but it's not just getting the guy who is crazy enough to get into this car, drive over there, and pick her up. That's not all it is. First of all, I'm not going to say it out loud, but there's a whole, it's an operation. It's a whole operation. But afterwards, Yad L'Achim at that point, and this is where we can learn so much from this. Yad L'Achim at that point can say, we did our job. We got you out. You're in safety. The problem is that coming back is not that easy. And not everybody's so happy that they're back. And not everybody wants these kids speaking Arabic in Palestinian dialect around. They need to also reacclimate them, put them back into society, give them new identities, give them new everything. Teach them how to live. Teach them how to be. They are undertaking the entire responsibility of not only saving these people, but giving them back a life. Just saving them from the depths is not enough. They're giving them back a life. They did a study years ago, I believe it was the University of Pennsylvania. I never planned on saying this study, so I never have the information on me. But you could Google it, and they did a study of people who were told that they are terminally ill. And then they were called back. This was not a controlled study. They didn't do this on purpose. They were called back and said that it was a misdiagnosis and they're healthy and they're going to live for many years to come. There were certain control points to the study that they had to believe it for a certain amount of time and make certain changes, whatever. But that was the basic idea. People who were misdiagnosed with a terminal illness and told that they only had X amount of time to live, believed it for X amount of time, and then were called back when it was discovered that it wasn't true, called back and told, we apologize, but, Baruch Hashem, I don't know if to say Baruch Hashem, but you're going to live. They did this study because I guess this happens too often. Once is too often, I guess, but still, where they were called back, spoken to, and if you were to assume the number one reaction to this, it would be either relief, joy, new lease on life. The most common reaction that psychologists were finding was depression. And they could not figure out why. They couldn't wrap their heads around why. Listen to this. They did this study and they found out when these people figured out or were told that they are going to live, they were robbed of everything that they lived and breathed for the past X amount of time. When someone Khalila gets news like that, all they can think about, all they sleep on, all they wake up with, all they eat, all they do is live death. That's all that's happening inside of them. When you take away the core of what somebody is, the identity of what they represent as, they're not left with joy, they're left as an empty keli. And when we're left as empty kelim, we get filled up with things like depression, purposelessness, meaninglessness. When we remove these people from these villages, from these places, that all they heard all day was kill the Jews, was that they're our enemy, that and you infuse them into that society, you might be killing them with a better death, but an equal death. So Yad L'Achim takes on that next stage and says, no. We also got to give them life. Saving them from death is not enough. We also got to give them life. This is as if a Hatzalah member saves someone, shows back up to their house the next day and says, I also want to offer you a job, by the way. It's like, who said that's your business? You saved them. On to the next. No. We have to make a whole nother wing to ourselves that also instills life. To save these people is beyond. They say a famous story of Oskar Schindler, where Oskar Schindler, one time they wanted to thank him for all that he's done, for saving so many lives. And they brought him to a window, I think it was in one of his offices, and outside of the window were all these people that he saved. And they surprised him, and they opened up the window, and he looked out, and he saw all these throngs of people that he saved. And he started crying. And at first they thought it was tears of joy. But he kept whispering to himself, what did I do? What did I do? What did I do? And they said, you did amazing. Look, it's incredible. And he looked at them and he said, no, you don't understand. I knew I was saving lives, but they were numbers to me. Look at this office. Look at this belt. The famous part was that he pointed at his belt. He said, you know how much this belt cost? You know how much more I could have done? That crowd could be double the size. You have any idea what I could have done? I always think about this when I want to think about what's going to be for us after 120. Everyone always assumes it's going to be the worst thing ever. You're going to come in, Din V'chashven, and it's going to be Yom Kippur and the worst Yom Kippur we ever had. You know, in that place that we just walk in and everyone's depressed and it's just going to be the worst. I don't think that's what's going to be bad. So from my Rebbeim, we're going to come up and they're going to say, yeah, you did it, you did great. And we're like, whoa, what about all my Averis? Like, we don't call them that up here. We call them challenges. And you were fighting against Muhammad Ali. You're not a boxer. You're imperfect. I don't know if you know him, but he made you that way. It was on purpose. By the way, you're going to have to answer for that, though. You're like, answer for what? The fact that you kept walking around telling everybody that he was supposed to make everything perfect. The fact that you lived your life saying everything's supposed to be perfect. Thinking that you knew better. thinking that you knew you were supposed to have more or less, or you were supposed to be different or born into a different family or be a different person. That you might have to answer for because you kind of said Ani Ma'amim Emunah Shleima every day and you really didn't mean it because right after that you said Ani Ma'amim Emunah Shleima except for a whole bunch of stuff that I think you might have messed up on. Because this person doesn't act the way they should and my kid isn't doing the right thing and this one isn't and my wife isn't. And they're like, no, he did those on purpose too. Those weren't the three things that like God missed. He knew about that. He gave you those on purpose. And we come up and they're going to say, no, you did great. You did great. But remember that time that you were there and you worked with that kid and you saved that kid? Yeah? Remember how great you felt? Yeah? Why didn't you keep going? Oh, I wasn't certified. I'm not a therapist. And? Well, no one told me I can. No, you felt amazing. That was us telling you can. That was us telling you, yay, go. Why weren't you more you? That's all we wanted. We wanted you to be more you. We wanted you to be more of who you are, not who you think you should have been. We wanted you to be you. The Navy SEALs have a famous thing they like to say. That when your brain tells you you're done, you cannot do more, you're exhausted, you're broken, you cannot go any further. It's over. This is it. You officially reached 40% of what you can accomplish. 40%. You know that's the mark. That's the mark. In bodybuilding, they have that sentence isn't ending and I was a bodybuilder. So that one, but when I was in Eretz Yisrael, so we were limited. We didn't have phones. Baruch Hashem, I don't know how people do it, how kids nowadays do it, but we didn't have phones. We didn't have any of these things. There was only a few things you could really busy yourself with when I was in yeshiva, and you could take on more learning. But I'm not a crazy person. So you could also, there was a gym you could work out. So we work out a lot. And there was this guy who was a bodybuilder who would come in and train with us. And he told me something unbelievable. My friend was lifting some weights. And he lifted them and he put them down. And the guy said, what was that? So I'm not going to say the language this guy used. But he said, that's a garbage set. So he said, why? He said, because you did it. He said, what do you mean? He said, I was supposed to lift 15 pounds, 3 sets of 8. And he said, yeah, and you did it. And he said, yeah, what's the problem? He said, you also did it yesterday. He said, yeah. He said, and you did it the day before. He said, yeah. He said, and you're going to do that tomorrow. He said, yeah. He said, you're going to die with no gains. He said, why? And he said the greatest line. He was an Israeli guy, and he had a little bit of he goes, because you don't fail. You don't fail, you don't grow. I said, I'm sorry? He goes, you don't fail, you don't grow. He said, in bodybuilding, there's a term called failure. Every ounce that you do, every work is for failure, he said. My mind was blown by this. Everything you do is in order to fail. You keep lifting until you can't, and only then is your muscle going to be stronger. But if you keep going until you're comfortable, you will never gain anything. There hasn't been a single great thing that has ever happened in the history of man while you were sitting on a couch. It has never happened. You've never been comfortable while it was going on. That's what I mean by sitting on a couch. Yes, you could have saved someone's life talking on a phone, sitting on a couch. But comfort was not what was on your mind. You were never comfortable while it was going on. The key to knowing it is knowing I'm uncomfortable, I'm getting this right. The Zohar brings down that everything that we have physically is there to correspond and explain to us something in our neshama, in our spirituality. When our bodies need that to grow, it's because our neshama also needs that to grow. Our neshama also needs failure. But failure is not a bad thing. Failure is the growth. Failure is how we grow. It is what we do in order to become bigger. And it is the only way we become bigger. If we never reached our limit, we have no idea how to go from there. What we learn from these ideas, what we learn from an organization like Yad L'Achim, is the concept of I don't want to be, when I come up and we give up, because it's a game of the Satan wants to convince us. So bring it down. Simply bring it down. Where we have modern psychology catching up with self-esteem things now. The Rambam was talking about 1,000 years ago. Where the sun's going to try to convince us. You're never going to be Moshe Rabbeinu. Why are you trying? He's going on a preconceived notion that's a lie, which is that I'm supposed to be Moshe Rabbeinu. And the Rambam says outright, you could be Moshe Rabbeinu. But all the Pirushim, what does that mean? It means you could be Moshe Rabbeinu, we just don't know why you want to do it. You're not him. Now you're not as great as him. You're not him. You're you. The famous cliched line. When you were born was the day that the Rebbeinu Shalom decided the world cannot exist anymore without you. If everything he has ever done is perfection, then that has to be true. Or everything isn't true. Every single one of these kids, when they were born over there into that, it's because the Rebbeinu Shalom decided this is how it's going to be, and there's nothing that this world can do further without this child. But I'm going to leave it to my kids to save them. When we come up, it's not going to be, how come you didn't go to that minyan that you know you were supposed to go to? Again, a game of the Yetzer Hara. And daven perfectly the entire time. And raise those perfect children. And have the perfect home and perfect marriage and perfect and perfect and perfect. He loves perfectionism, the Yetzer Hara. It's like, it's his life's blood. That's not what they're going to call us to task on. What they're going to call us to task on is that the Rebbeinu Shalom is going to say, I allowed you. I sent the opportunities to you. There were lives you could have affected. There were lives you could have saved. Me, it's going to go for Gaz. No. That's not up to you, says Hashem. That's not up to you. I'll take care of that end of it. I said this over by the girls earlier today. I was in a bad situation about a week ago. My Talmidim were with me. We were in a uncomfortable situation. That's all the information you're going to get. And we're standing over there, and I have a problem. I can't cover up things on my face. Not like makeup. I'm saying I can't I can't cover up. Yeah, everyone's like, yeah, I know. we see it. Yeah, but I can't hide what I'm feeling. It's not because I can't. If I had to put on a poker face, I've had to do that a million times. It's when I'm spacing out, whatever's going on up here is going to be very clear and evident over here. My wife all the time will be like, your face. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm smiling at the wrong time. I'm laughing at the wrong time. Because when I can't sit, I have ADD and I can't sit without this working. So or entertaining itself. So we were sitting over there and I'm smiling. And one of my Talmidim look over, he's like, Rabbi, you're laughing. I'm like, huh? He's like, you're laughing. I'm like, I'm sorry. I was in my own head. And all of them turned around. They're like, not exactly the time to laugh, though. I'm like, yeah. I'm not laughing at them. I'm not laughing at us. I'm not laughing at what just happened. You need to understand something. I'm going to be very vulnerable with you guys right now, but I think it's important you understand why I was laughing. The way it works up here is that I have to speak tonight somewhere. And I didn't have a story. And now I do. And I was saying the story over in my head and preparing the jokes for it. So I was laughing. And they're all like, so much worse. So much worse than just sitting there and laughing, by the way. I was like, guys, you need to understand something. It's not a good thing. It's not something I've worked on. It's that people ask me all the time. Someone came over to speak about one of my brothers. People ask us all the time. They're like, how do you guys have so many stories to tell? How does it? I tell them, I don't have more stories than you. Not more, and I promise you, no more. I live a very boring life. No more interesting things happen to me than any average person. The only difference is that I have to speak 3, 4, 5 times a week. So I have to pay more attention than you. That's it. That's the only difference. I can't read, I'm dyslexic, so I can't look up stories in books. They have to happen to me or I have nothing to do. I'm lost after that. So I tell my guys all the time, I'm like, every time something weird or bad or uncomfortable is happening to me, I'm like, this is material. This is all material. This is great. This is fantastic. I literally translate these things into dollars. It's perfect. I hold things sometimes and I only let them out on a good one. It's perfect. It's all material. And what I didn't realize is that it leads that sometimes I'm in a bad situation. I'm sitting there. I know. It's a car accident. Everyone could have died. This is wild. Everyone could have died and we did it. I don't know why. I don't know why we did it. This is going to be amazing. This is going to be amazing. And it works every time. And again, it's not an emunah that I've worked on. I think this is completely the lack of emunah, to be honest. I'm never seeing what the Rebbeinu Shalom is trying to tell me. I'm just like, what can I tell a crowd with this? But in reality, when we look at this, and we see it for what it is, and we see what's happening, this is all material for us. When Hashem says, what did you do? What were you a part of? You say, I was a part of this. We had these covert operations that the FBI, the CIA, the NSA would be jealous of how we pulled it off. And we went in and they're like, you were a part of those things? Like, yeah, I was a part of those things. I got the receipts. I was a part of those things. There are receipts right now. I was a part of those things. Yeah, I was. That is the greatness. And I want to say something that's going to be taken the wrong way. I'll tell you that beforehand. It might even be greater on a certain level, especially nowadays, than the guy who's driving the car. I've seen this in my own life. Being the guy on the ground, doing the hard, dirty work, is very difficult. I'm not taking that away. But it's passion. You know the need of what you're doing. You know how important it is. You're looking the kid in the eyes. You're seeing the years of pain. You're seeing the years of difficulty. You see the life. You feel the life that you're saving at that moment. When you're 6,000 miles away from it, and you're sitting in no place further than it, and you still say, I can open this and feel. You still say, I have the heart that can hit 6,000 miles away to a person I've never met and never will meet. When you're able to do that, it's a different level of yid. That's a different level of person. I'm not here to judge which one's better. Please, I wasn't doing that. I'm just saying, don't discount. Again, a game of the Satan. Don't discount your connection to this through even just being here tonight. We always want to say, I've done nothing. But that's because we haven't developed a taste for failure. We haven't developed a taste for the difficulty. As we speak right now, there are Jewish children and a Jewish woman sitting imprisoned by an animal. As we said before, it's a modern day pigeon shvuyin. To be able to go and say, I did not turn my back on that person, is an investment that is worth everything. And when you do it, what you can ask the Ribono Shel Olam love. I want to end with this one story. You might have heard me say it before, in which case, okay. It was a Rav of a Yishuv in Eretz Yisrael. He was loved, is loved, slow around, is loved. by the whole yeshuv. Very, very big yeshuv, very popular yeshuv. He was loved by the whole yeshuv. He had a son who was also a big Talmid Chacham from a very, very young age, very special boy. He was in top yeshivas. The whole yeshuv loved this kid, and they loved his father. The yeshuv, as happens sometimes, had a little bit of a problem with teenagers that weren't staying on the up and up, that weren't doing what they were raised to do, let's say. And they would cause this type of trouble and this type of trouble. They broke into the shul and stole some alcohol. They did this. They made parties. Kids. But they were known around the yeshuv as the rabble-rousers, as the difficult ones. This rabbi, though, on his way home from shul every night, every Friday night, would take the long way home. It would take the long way because it would go through a park. And that's where these kids would hang out, the Chol Shabbos and all these things. And he would walk up to them. They would immediately, put their cigarettes away and and this I heard after the first time I said this story. Someone told me that the reason he would walk through, even though he knew that they were being Machal Shabbos, this is caring beyond anything we can explain. The reason why he would walk through is because they would hide their cigarettes, because they would put their phones away there. Now they don't, according to a lot of shittas, they don't have a din of Machal Shabbos now. They don't have a din of Machal Shabbos because it's not nigla. They don't have a din of Machal Shabbos, so if they touch wine, if they wet it, it's still okay, according to a lot of people. He was pottering a lot of the yeshuv from benefiting from Eichel Shabbos. It's an unbelievable idea, but okay. So he walks by them. And he would always say to them, do you boys want to eat? Do you want to come over? Do you want to? And they would always say no, but they would schmooze with the rabbi for a few minutes to tell him some jokes, and he'd go home. Every single week. Him and his son. Sure enough, tragedy struck. The rabbi's son one time was on his way home for Shabbos, and he got into a horrible car accident, and he passed. The whole yeshuv was strict. They were beside themselves. The whole yeshuv sat shiva. And the Rav was a very prominent Rav. And big, big people from all over Eretz Yisrael. Rabbanim, Gedolim, politicians, came to meet Menachem Avel, the father. And the entire time he kept his composure, as was characteristic of him. He kept himself together, and he spoke about the learning of his son, and the beauties of his midas. Finally, about the third, fourth night of Shiva, the door opens, and all of these boys, the troublemakers, walk in. And everyone's giving dirty looks. What are they doing here? It's disrespectful. They're all dressed like that. They all stink of cigarettes. What are they doing? And they walk up to the Rav. They say to him, Rabbi, we want to tell you something. We decided. This Shabbos, b'schut your son, we're going to keep Shabbos this week. And that was the breaking point. The Rav broke down, crying uncontrollably. He hugged them, he kissed them. He told them how much it means to him. He celebrated it. He told everybody to come, and he was telling them what the boys said. And the boys left. One of the members of the shul come over to the rabbi and he says to him, Rabbi, I don't understand. I'm sorry. I can also almost guarantee you this is the guy who was probably on the phone with the rabbi 2 to 3 to 4 times a week saying, what are we going to do about these kids? What are we going to do about these kids? He goes, I don't understand. I'm lost over here. These Gedolim show up, these Rosh Yeshivas show up, and they say that they're having the whole yeshiva finish Shas for your son, and you're unmoved. They say they're going to learn his Masechta. Someone came and said that he's going to print some of the Chedushei Torah of your son and give it out in yeshivas. You're unmoved. These kids walk in, They're going to keep one Shabbos, and you know as well as I do, they probably won't even do that. But if they do that, they're breaking the next one. You know as well as I do, they're going to break the next one. What are you so moved about? So Rav smiles. And he puts a very pitying hand on this man's shoulder. He looks him in the eyes and he says to him, I hope, I pray you never understand why that affected me. I hope and pray you never understand it. But until you can feel what it's like, Chalila, to lose a child, you have no idea what it's like to hear what those boys said. So he said, Rebbe, I don't get it. Explain it. He said, you have any idea what I would do one more minute with my son? You have any idea what I would do to spend one more minute with my son? But he's gone, and he's not coming back, and I can't. But you know what I would give? I'd give everything. So he said, okay. So he said, these boys are gone. They're gone. And they told me that they're going to go back to their father for one more Shabbos. You have any idea what that's going to mean to the Rebbeinu Shalom? You have any idea what that means to a father that lost his sons? You have no idea. You can't possibly understand it. And if it's one Shabbos, what I would give for 1 minute, let alone one Shabbos, we're bringing children that would otherwise not just not be around, not just not be Shomer Shabbos, but would be raised to hate who they are, would be raised to hate and despise the neshama that's inside of every single one of them. And we're allowing a mother to watch that happen. Tonight we open up our hearts and we say that we're going to take the stand so that we can say we took a stand. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for listening.